In less than a year, we opened Marigold, and it was my husband and Laura and I. And oh my God, I mean, we had lines like out the door. It was crazy. I couldn't believe that there was so many people that needed this. Yeah, I mean, I get teary.
Welcome to Connection Request. I'm Joel Leeman, and you are listening to the first episode of Season 2. Special thanks to our presenting sponsor, SK Coffee. This season, we have an amazing lineup of guests on the show. We're chatting with the architect of Minnesota's pandemic response, a prominent teacher TikToker, a senior advisor at the Gates Foundation, an actress from the TV show Dave, and so many more. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. But today we are talking with Erin Flavin, owner of Minnesota's first non-alcoholic beverage shop, Marigold, now with 2 locations, as well as the owner of her salon, Honeycomb. She's on a mission to make not drinking cool. And if her first year in business is any indication, I'd say she's doing a pretty good job of it. We chat about how the pandemic made her rethink a lot, including her relationship with alcohol. We also chat about how she's moved throughout her career in both hair and entrepreneurship. And we get a first-hand look at the rise of the NA movement, both in Minnesota and across the US. By the way, Marigold has a bunch of great events going on to celebrate Sober October, including a weekly golden hour. So if you are based in Minnesota like I am, we've got a link in the show notes to learn more. Thanks for being here with us for Season 2. We're so happy you're here. We'll get to my conversation with Erin Flavin after a quick word from our sponsor, SK Coffee. This season, we are thrilled to be sponsored by SK Coffee, a specialty coffee roaster based in Minnesota, shipping worldwide. Listeners of the show will remember Sam from Season 1, where he shared his journey from musician to entrepreneur. We'll hear more from Sam later in the episode.
My name's Erin Flavin. I have been a hairdresser for over 20 years. And during the pandemic and uprising, I had a mirror put up to how much I was drinking. And in that journey, a lot of things were revealed, and I quit drinking. And long story short, opened a non-alcoholic bottle shop, which forced me into hairdresser retirement, which I never thought was going to happen. So I won't be the blue-haired little permed old lady doing people's hair anymore.
Yeah, so something that, as you know, on this show, we talk about people who make leaps and go in unexpected places. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you is because you, I think like so many people during the pandemic, had this moment of awakening or whatever you want to call it. But tell us a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, about that. That's a big move to make, to go from salon owner and hairdresser to opening a second business, and it focused on something completely new. If I'm right, you are the first NA bottle shop in Minnesota.
Correct.
What did that feel like? And what was the journey from, okay, I think I'm drinking a lot, to I'm going to turn that into a business and part of my life's mission? You know, that's a big leap. Not everybody does that.
It was really confusing for the general contractors that I was working with. So essentially what went down was, March 14th, when we shut the doors, and all of my hairdressers, who are all independent contractors, we had to stop doing hair. And as a den mother of stylists, what could I do to keep the business open without putting all of these independent contractors at risk of losing their place to be working?
Yeah.
And myself keeping my business open. I had been working really hard at getting my retail side of the business rocking for years.
Yeah.
And really, really hard to kind of get people to come in and look at the other things that we had in the shop when they came in and saw that we were a hair salon. They didn't want to interrupt us and whatnot.
Sure.
When we closed the doors, I quickly went into that fight or flight mode where you're like, okay, I'm sure a lot of business owners did. And I did have a lot of people I talked to throughout this whole thing with like Dylan Elverson from Modern Times. We kept in contact about how we were going to like change the idea of what we were doing with our business while this was all going on. So I got everything on Shopify. I started ordering products with my idle loan that I got. I went hustled and I got all of the things, the PPP, the idle loan and everything. And it's like hard to even go back and think about. I'm sitting at the dining room table that my kids were running around fighting on computers. This isn't like a typical thing for me to be at a computer, right? Like, so this was all like really, really difficult. My husband, he's a public librarian. So they were trying to get him to be working from home, which seemed really weird. Because we are public facing people. This is the first time I'd ever tried to work from home, where we're going through the feelings as hairdressers of feeling animosity for all the people who can work from home, who can still make a living. We couldn't. And people were begging us to go to their backyards and do their hair, even though we didn't know what was going to happen to us if we did. And so trying to help everybody through that journey. I didn't have anybody pay rent at that time. I just wanted everybody to feel secure and comfortable and knowing that they were going to have a place to come work after whenever this was going to be done. Fast forward, I don't even know, into the time warp of COVID, and then George Floyd was murdered. And we were about to open the shop. And my landlord was boarding up the building. And my landlord was Mark McClellan. His very first business was Slice of New York. And his brother, Steve McClellan, opened First Avenue. He's like one of 10 or 11 kids, and I'm one of 9. So we always had that kind of bond. And I've been in the building for now 13 years. And so he kind of half jokingly, very kind of seriously was like, are you really interested in buying the building? And I was like, as he's boarding the building up, and I have no stylist working. And I'm like, well, I am, but I have no money and you're boarding me up right now. And he's like, well, I'm willing to wait for you to figure out the financing to do this. And he did. He waited a year for me to get my hustle on and find all of the resources that I could possibly find in the city to buy $1 million building during the pandemic.
My gosh.
And that's when I'll say I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out when I was 16 years old. So I have a beauty school. That's all I had. So all of this was my college, like trying to find grants and loans and work with the SBA, the bank, different lender that is a higher interest rate, but all of these things in order to finance this building. And in that, with an SBA loan, you have to have 51% occupancy of your building. And I've never really wanted to be a big salon owner. The only reason why I've ever grown beyond the original 3 that I had set out with 13 years ago was to have babies, and then to be faced with having to expand my business as a hairdresser with more stylists when stylists were like dropping like flies. Nobody wanted to do hair. It was scary. And not to mention the emotional labor of having to take care of yourself and then your clients who are facing a global trauma, wherever anybody was at on that spectrum, whether they were, it's mostly affluent middle class people that are coming into the salon to get their hair done. And so they're feeling guilty. They're going through a reckoning of sorts with how they face racial equity and all of this stuff that we as hairdressers are trying to help them.
Sort of be a therapist almost as well, like a second job on top of doing the hair.
I love the women that I work with. We went through so much together, and I've never in my 13 years of owning a shop been more, either it's that I'm in tune with how to run a shop now after trial and error for the last 13 years, or I really did land on the most amazing women that I could possibly be working with. And I didn't want to lose that by adding in some new elements. Like, we were all very tender and needed to feel safe in our environment. But in order to do the thing that I never would have ever dreamed, buying a building, I mean, that's my security. This is hairdressers don't have retirement. We don't get a 401k. We don't get any of that. And, I'll say, as an advocate of the hairdresser, when people question why hairdressers raise their prices, we have to pay for insurance. We have to, take care of our children the best we can without health insurance. We have to go to the open market for that.
Totally different than a knowledge worker or somebody, right? Like, it's just a different set of circumstances in the world.
About why they're raising their prices. They work their asses off, and they love you and want to take care of you. So you should do the same.
Yeah.
Side note.
Yeah, good side note. I appreciate it.
So during all that, I'm drinking with Burke and Christina at Ola across the street, who's also closed. We're drinking margaritas and wondering how they're going to expand their patio, how we're going to make this business happen. The restaurants, oh my God, a totally other, you know. And going home, going to the Cork Dork, buying a couple of nice bottles of wine and drinking them. Long story short, I figured out that I was drinking too much and I needed to quit.
Yeah.
And it was October 8th. It'll be 3 years. So I quit, and my husband probably 2 weeks later quit as well, which really helped out. I mean, we're waking up every morning and fighting and hungover, and the kids are a mess, and it was hard.
Yeah.
And so once that kind of happened, I started researching different things that were out there that we could drink to feel like we were a part of the solo stove gathering in the backyard, right? I think my first real taste of something that opened my eyes to the world of non-alcoholic was Suki and Mimi was struggling to open, and they had a full NA tasting on their menu. We went and sat outside and got in a conversation with one of the servers about how we quit drinking, and he's like, "Oh, you have to try this sparkling tea that we have on our NA flight." And it was the Copenhagen sparkling tea, the Blah, which is a jasmine based. And it was mind-blowing. And I was like, wow, there are people who are actually taking into account the people who want to celebrate with food, with friends, and making something sophisticated for us to drink. And then, fast forward a couple weeks when Suki and Mimi, or maybe months, I don't know, time warp,
Totally.
when Mimi opened and we went in for dinner because we were so excited that they were honoring that side of society, people who don't drink. And we had some beautiful cocktails, non-alcoholic cocktails on their menu, and figured out that they were Tres Leches. I don't know if you know those guys. And searching for those guys it's pretty funny. I really had to hit all of my restaurant contacts to find out who these dudes were, because they don't have a social media presence. Their website is non-existent. They don't be discovered for how beautiful of a beverage that they're making. I mean, they're the drink base for most of the beautiful cocktails that you can find around town, whether they're alcoholic or non-alcoholic. And who introduced me? I think my friend Katie Callan, who worked for Fair State for a time, and I think she knew them from being in the restaurant industry forever. Those guys took me in and introduced me to Peter Schweigert, who is Dry Wit. Dry Wit is a completely zero-proof, non-alcoholic beverage made by Peter Schweigert and another founder, Megan Dayton. Peter was the bartender and the genius behind the bar at Marvel Bar.
And they had been starting at kind of an NA journey in early 2020, right? I remember sort of reading the press at the time. It was like, oh, this is really interesting. A bar is sort of having this whole new menu of NA. So it seems like even though you've been the first to open up your own location as a bottle shop, the movement was sort of getting off the ground slowly before that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And oh my gosh, I love Peter Schweigert. I love all those guys. I met Ben from ABV. ABV technology is, have you heard of it? It's pretty cool. Ben has created a machine that de-alcoholizes alcoholic beverages.
Oh,
So
interesting.
non-alcoholic beers around town, that is ABV technology. So
Cool.
he's a really cool guy. There's the behind the scenes of the NA scene in Minneapolis is incredible. And there's
Yeah.
so many cool people who are a part of it. It is, I mean, I would say um, very lovingly that it has created a movement to help people who otherwise don't identify with 12 steps, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
being able to have a space in society that isn't so other
Mm.
than everybody else. That's what I'm trying to do is
Yeah.
not drinking cool
Yeah.
because in all of my life. I mean, I'm not even going to be embarrassed to say that as an adult, I went through, from adolescent to adult, like you wanted to hang out with people who were as raw or wild as you were, right? Like
Mm.
I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
lived at the church that threw noise shows. That was my last like jaunt in, party land before I became a hairdresser. And then my drinking became super bougie. Once I became a hairdresser and had money to throw around, I was going out for fancy dinners that I can't even remember what I would eat because I would drink so much. Like
Yeah.
alcoholism or partying, it progresses in your life in a way that you can't really control while you
Yeah.
think alcohol is the thing that makes it easier for you to control. Like it will take away your anxiety if you're going to go to a party.
Yeah. One thing I love about your story is, well, first of all, I just continue to be fascinated that you kind of made that leap. And it's not only kind of this movement, but it's now a business venture, but also kind of the intricate sounds of the community behind it. Did it, I guess, kind of a two-part question. One is, did it feel risky once you finally both made the decision and opened up your doors? Was it like, right, to go from, hey, I'm a salon owner to got this other new business that's never been done in Minnesota before? Did it feel risky, or did you feel like you had support? And then part two, I guess, is what's the response been like since you opened your doors?
Oh my gosh. It felt really risky, but it also felt so right,
Mm.
especially because I kind of had my market research in my chair, like
Mm.
talking to young women, older women, men, young men, older men was facing that struggle with alcohol. People that I've been doing their hair for years and years and they were not big drinkers
Mm.
and they were staying at home and that was the way that they were marking the end of the day. The end of their workday was by an alcoholic beverage.
Totally.
So when moving into all this, and I'm going to give a big ups to Katie Kalin, who we became good friends during all this. And she was like, if you're going to do this, let's do it. Let's put some non-alcoholic beverages in your salon and let's trial this. Let's see how this works. So that's what I did. I put up some shelves and I started selling some cool things that I was discovering in the market. And so that was going well. And people, when I started seeing that people were coming in specifically to the salon for these non-alcoholic beverages, that little dream of making my boutique kind of welcome people in off the street to check it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did have some people question my sanity during it too. Like, well,
Sure.
you think it's actually going to work? And it was terrifying, opening the doors and wondering how I was going to manage it all. I can't believe I did all the things. I still don't understand how I did all of that while doing hair, taking care of my kids and my relationship not imploding because we were under so much insane stress.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely quitting drinking was the best decision I could have made for all of the pressure that I was under
Yeah.
during whole journey. But since I've opened the doors, I got a $10,000 grant right pre-opening, which allowed me to hire a manager, which I
Mm.
desperately needed because I didn't have a single cent left after all was said and done.
Yeah.
And I hired one of my oldest friends, Lara Valente, who'd been in the restaurant industry for over 25 years.
Mm.
And that woman is a powerhouse who I would also like to plug is opening her own yarn and fabric store called Dandelion Fibers. She's
Cool.
incredible woman. So if you don't see her in restaurants anymore, you will now see her embarking on her own business journey, which is well deserved. But she is a powerhouse, man. She, in less than a year, we opened Marigold, and it was my husband and Laura and I. And oh my God, I mean, we had lines like
Wow.
out the door. It was crazy. I couldn't believe that there were so many people that needed this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get teary just thinking about how every day, I mean, it's like I haven't lost that component of connection that I had, that I built with my clients, which I'm very sorry, clients, that I don't do your hair anymore, but I loved that. I loved that about doing hair, being able to
Yeah.
connect with people and share their lives, on a 6 to 8 week basis, finding out what's going on with them, how their kids are, like
Yeah.
what's going on in their life and how they're taking care of themselves. And people coming in and the stories that they have about just being able to feel like they have somebody that they share this commonality with. It's really special. And I had a woman who was coming in to the shop a lot when it was just the salon, Melissa Rubel, who was at the time working at Ito, and she was buying some non-alcoholic beverages and getting really excited about it, and we just connected on so many different levels. She's now my events and social media coordinator, and she is also shares a very big desire to connect with the community, which we love. I mean,
Yeah.
if there was more of us to go around, we would love to make it happen, but there aren't enough hours in the day for the requests we're getting for this. Like, it's not just an NA bottle shop, and it is like community connection. It really is.
Totally. And speaking of the response, it must have been good, because how quickly did you decide to open a second location then?
Oh my God, that was wild. So we quickly hired up. Laura and I were in the shop one day, and this couple, Bonnie and Milo, were coming in pretty frequently, and they were like, I just wish you were in our part of town. We're in St. Paul, and it's for some reason, that real physical barrier is there with the river. I don't know.
Speaking as a St. Paul resident, I can agree.
Yeah, totally. It's not that far, but for some reason, it really does feel like a barrier. And they said, hey, the little bottle shop moved down the street and this cute little space is open. You should come and check it out. And I was like, find out who the landlord is and get her number, and we'll go check it out. Why not? And we did. And all signs kind of pointed to yes. The landlord was a woman, which is really cool. Another commercial building owned by a woman, and who had been owned by a woman for like over 60 years. Her mother was the very first realtor in Minnesota.
Whoa.
Who owned the Milton Square.
Crazy.
And I just really loved that story. And the space is adorable. It's 380 square feet. And what I love is to make a space so cute. And it's a little jewel box. It's a genie bottle. I grew up watching I Dream a Genie. So it's my very own little genie bottle without the master on the outside.
There's a lot to love about SK Coffee, our presenting sponsor for Connection Request. Every time I talk to SK's founder, Sam Chelberg, I'm fascinated to learn more about what makes their coffee so special and why people are so drawn to them. Here's Sam.
We're not a company that you're going to get the exact same thing over and over again. It's always going to be an exploration. This is literally an agricultural product, and every year it's different. So it's like wine in that way.
But something even more special than the coffee itself has always stood out to me. It's the entire SK team's passion. They treat their work like a real art form, and each of them care deeply about coffee's people, place, and process. Here's Sam again.
The way we're trying to tell that story is not through, interesting crafted cocktail coffee drinks, right? It's all, what is the coffee trying to say? What is the producer, the place, the plant itself trying to say, the process? And we are literally translating that communication from the raw product into your cup.
To learn more about SK Coffee, visit skcoffeeplease.com or check out their excellent Instagram page. If you live in Minnesota, stop into one of their cafes in St. Paul or Minneapolis. You might even spot me there. All those links are in the show notes. Okay, now back to the show. I'm just curious, you have said in an interview I read with you that you believe sobriety is a total spectrum and that people should feel accepted anywhere they fall on that line. I'm just curious, talk a little bit more about that. And I guess another thing I'm curious is, where do you see the intersection of the NA movement with another big movement in Minnesota right now and around the country, which is cannabis? Talk to me a little bit about those two things and how they do or don't kind of intersect.
That's a big conversation, man. So I didn't really tinker with cannabis for a good year after I quit. I just had not been a big pothead in high school, and then once I started drinking, it just really they don't jive very well for me. I mean, I can't believe people can actually smoke and drink it.
Sure.
It blows my mind. I would be in the hospital. But as things were progressing and really like the self-discovery of who I was as a person without substance, I felt a little bit more comfortable after a year of really facing myself and all of the problems that I had been kind of drinking away for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I started inviting a little bit of that into my world, and I'm a very low dose girl, but it does really help me out. It helps me sleep. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. I like the cross pollination of it. I like the ability to, I want to educate people enough, and the people that I work with, who are all incredibly lovely people and take a lot of pride in knowing all about the products that we have at the shop.
Yeah.
To be able to kind of have a conversation with somebody about where they're at in their sobriety or non-sobriety, or taking a break, or maybe somebody just wants to put a little bit of NA gin in with their gin, so they are just reducing the amount of alcohol that they're drinking. There should be no judgment on where people are at with that. It's such an individual journey. So really wanting to face that and have people come in and feel comfortable wherever they're at with it. I mean, I feel the same way about the salon. Like, I never wanted anybody to come in there and feel like they don't belong there because they're not wearing head to toe, Prada or whatever it is. Like, we're a very casual group of people, and it's real. I want people to feel like they can be honest with themselves when they're in that environment. Yeah, but with the cannabis stuff, it's pretty frustrating. I'm now facing, I would really like to highlight this beverage that Bauhaus and I were doing a collaboration, and I'm coming out with cannabis beverage at the end of October, or maybe sooner, and I can't sample it out at my shop because I don't have a liquor license. And so it is a big disappointment that the alcohol industry is, and understandably why. I mean, a lot of the breweries are the ones who are making these seltzers and whatnot. But when I look at cannabis, I look at it as a medicine and something that really can help people with pain, with sleep, with, if used right, anxiety, with all of those things. And now it's under the wing of the alcohol.
Seems like maybe they shouldn't be the ones who get to sort of be in the driver's seat for the movement.
No, not at all.
Sure.
And I've already jumped through a lot of hoops. The city and the health department couldn't quite figure out where to put me with licensing.
Sure.
So that's been another big journey. I feel like businesses like mine shouldn't be punished, and I shouldn't have to get a liquor license or put in a small kitchen in order to get a the lowest grade liquor license. Like, it would be like a 3-2 license. Like, I would have to put in a kitchen and all
just to
of that.
sort of meet those requirements. Sure. Interesting.
I don't want to do. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know what the answer is about that. And I feel like it's just like the government. You just don't really feel like you have any say, no matter what a democratic society we live in. There's no, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
feel like anybody's going to listen to me. So
Yeah. Well, that's frustrating. I guess my naive, optimistic hope for you is that as this new office gets put in place and all that kind of stuff, that they do take time to sort of listen to you and build a relationship. Because it seems to me like you're, I'm sure we'll get to kind of where this movement is headed, but it seems like you're kind of part of building this big tent of NA, and it seems like something that we would want to continue. So I wish you luck.
thank you.
You mentioned you didn't go to college, that you were a hairdresser for a long time, you opened your own shop. Just tell me a little bit about like that part of your career and life journey. What have you learned along the way? And I guess what's your relationship with identity as it relates to, in some ways, leaving that part of your life behind? Obviously, you're still running the salon, but as you said kind of at the beginning of the show, it is like you're not doing people's hair anymore. Yeah, that's a big question. There's a lot to get through in there, but tell me
Yeah.
about kind of that side of you and who you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then being asked that question, you're like, oh man, I guess I really have to pinpoint how that all played out. It is, I fought being a hairdresser for a really long time just because I grew up in it. My best friend and I, we came up in her dad's salon, and my sister also did hair. And I take pieces of what I learned from John as a salon owner, and he also was an art dealer. So there are pieces that I took with me from that, celebrating local artists, and will continue to do that. Okay. Sorry. Hard question. I guess coming from doing hair and how hard you have to work behind the chair and also be connected to so many people's lives. And I always loved the connections that I could make with people through that, like
Yeah.
whether or not I connect them or it's a connection that I have that I can send off to somebody else. Learning about people's lives is something we have in common.
Indeed.
Big time. It's such an important piece of who I am. Being from a big family and just living in this city my whole life, have learned about a lot of different people's lives, which
Yeah.
is so cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of the struggles that artists have, like coming up or being able to, I feel fortunate that I was able to open a business and have a storefront and have all of the things that a lot of these small makers, the whole maker community kind of came up around this. I mean, it's been around forever, right? Like, my brother jokes that anytime I'm like, oh God, I need a new pair of shoes. He's like, well, why don't you have one of your weird cobbler friends make you like, he's always like joking that I know somebody who makes every item on the
Yeah.
planet, right?
Yeah.
But that is a thing that I feel like I got to expand my desire to connect people and bring up different people, like by hosting pop-ups and letting people bring their things in and sell them in a store where
Yeah.
they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to have a store and get discovered. I mean, it's a lot easier to be a merchant in this era with Instagram and everything like that. But I don't feel like I lost my identity as a hairdresser. I feel like I got to expand it with this new journey in the way that, I mean, truly, it is a really beautiful connection between the two because we so intimately talk about our personal lives in the chair. People who find themselves not very conversational about themselves and what they have going on reveal a lot in the chair. It's inevitable. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess, is that a roundabout way to answer it? I'm sorry, I had to think about that really hard while talking about it.
Yeah, no, I think you got there. It's interesting how you draw that through line through your career, right? Of like, in some ways, like something that I like to talk about with anyone in terms of career journeys is you're always just like discovering a new chapter of yourself, right? And in that way, this, in a weird roundabout way, just ended up being the next thing. And also, did I read that dad owned a bar as well? So in that way, you're also sort of continuing something you knew, but just a little bit of a spin on it.
Yeah, what's really funny is that the bar that my dad owned in Little Falls, called Flavin's Pub, we walked by a few years ago, and it's now a salon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's really funny. That's so funny.
So that's really wild. But also, I was thinking about this earlier today. I had therapy today too. So
same. Later.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Therapy and podcasts are, sort of nice
so good.
overlap.
But thinking about how my household was always a party. There was always my brothers and sisters, my brother Sean just turned 65 and I'm 45. So he's my third oldest brother. So there's always been this kind of sense of gathering and an ongoing party, a celebration, a community connection in my life that, it brought me up. So I will never lose that. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
That being said, I guess I will shamelessly plug the November 4th. We're going to be having a 1-year party to celebrate Honeycomb, Marigold, the whole thing, and our new beverage that we're coming out with. And also to welcome into town a cool company called Proxies that essentially started around the time 2020, 2019 by this company Acid League. And so we're going to be welcoming their products into the store and celebrating the other vendors that we've got a lot of cool people in the city that are doing cool things. So,
well, thank you for that. I will definitely be there. And when this comes out, we'll definitely make sure to promote that. That's maybe a good kind of segue into the future. I guess, where do you see this journey going as much as you've planned out for the future, right? This is such a new and exciting chapter, as well as you're kind of at the helm of this kind of new movement in Minnesota. I'm curious, what is sort of next in addition to throwing a party? And then I guess too, as much as you have a sense of like the national and or global scene, like where does what's next for you and your business in Minnesota fit into kind of that bigger picture of NA as a movement?
It's definitely a movement. I'm definitely I could have a full-time job helping coach people on how to open their own. Every day we get somebody reaching out to find out how they go about doing this. And I don't have enough time to be able to help people, but I'm so happy that it is happening, that small towns are like taking it into consideration. I mean, we were in a small town in, God, where did we go this summer? Lake Vermilion and around that area. And we went to some dive bar to get pizza one night. And there was several tables who were at the bar drinking non-alcoholic beer, like Bud Zero, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, because there is nothing else to do in a small town. Your community goes to the bar at night and play pull tabs, or there was trivia or whatever it is. And you want to still be a part of that.
Yeah.
You don't want to,
the fabric of the community. Yeah. Like that's
right.
Yeah.
But to make it acceptable in the fabric of the community to not drink is such a big deal. And having it recognized globally is a really big deal. It's so cool.
Yeah.
As far as Marigold goes, I'm really working hard at not getting too far ahead of myself, because that's something, I'm an ideas person and I don't drive everybody that works for me crazy. So I'm really trying to focus on the things that we're trying to get better at. I mean, it will be a year, November 1st. So we haven't even been open in a year and we have 2 stores. So just really making sure to take care of the people that we have in store and keeping them educated and keeping them happy and excited to talk to people every day about their journey and how we can support that. And also getting out into the community. And like, we did an event at the U of M with a small department. We're going to be doing the James J. Hill House. There's a lot of different little events that we could be a part of, but it also requires staffing and, you know, and a lot of work that Melissa Rubel is doing right now to keep it coordinated and you know, what makes it, I don't want to say worth our time, but there is a component of that
Yeah.
it's so much work.
Can't do everything, right?
Everything off, do all the planning, do all that. But that being said, we want to be there for people. I would really love to do some product development and, you know, develop my brand more, which I love my designer, Maddie Nye. She has been in my life for over 20 years and she worked as a receptionist at my salon. And she was one of the small maker community that kind of came up during that time. And she's an incredible graphic designer and I'm really lucky to have her. So I would love to see everything non-alcoholic mattified.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Well, you have been so generous with your time. You've already both taught me a lot in this conversation. I think given me some really good things to think about. As I already sort of disclosed, I have been a patron of one of your shops and plan to be for the other as well and look forward to the party. Are there any parting thoughts, Erin, about either lessons learned or sort of, things that you learned, whether it relates to your life or your career or anything of this journey that you've been on? Anything else that you think our listeners might be interested in?
Well, I guess with the growth of the movement of NA and the cannabis world, I just want to say that there's room for everybody. And that I've noticed in the coming up of the cannabis area that there's a lot of kind of battling between which brand is the best. And after being a hairdresser and a salon owner for so many years, I just will say that there's room for everybody. There's a salon on every half block. Just do good at what you do good at and support everybody else because we're all in it. And if you're there to provide something special to the community, just be your best self for that, not to compete. And also, I will say that there's this marketing scenario called Sober October, but it does give people a chance to kind of recover from that summertime party town that everybody has been on, drinking margaritas and as much sparkling wine as I could possibly do in a summer. We're going to be hosting a golden hour at Marigold on Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8, I think we decided. And so people can come in and have a drink and be able to kind of talk to other people who are always surprised that there's other people just like them struggling with the amount that they're drinking or just want to take a break. It's a fun place to connect and be disarmed. It's a happy place. So please come in and check out Wednesday nights.
Well, where can people find out more information about all the amazing stuff you all are doing and follow you on your journey as you go?
You can find us on Instagram. And also you could go to our website at mary.gold and go to our events portion of the page and find out all the things that we have coming up.
Cool. Well, I will look forward to seeing you very soon at your shop. And Erin Flavin, I just really appreciate you taking some time to spend with us today. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate you thinking of me. Thank you, Joel.
That is it for today's episode of the Connection Request. If you enjoyed today's show, would you leave us a review or share it with a friend? It'd mean a lot to us. Today's show is produced by Marie Ionazzo and me, Joel Leeman. Today's theme music is by the amazing Mike Lauer and his band Viewers Like You. It's from their album Panoramia. The show is a production of Shrug Content, a podcast studio based in Minnesota. You can learn more about us at shrugcontent.com. Special thanks to SK Coffee, our very first presenting sponsor for the show. You can learn more about them at skcoffeeplease.com. If you live around the Twin Cities, ping me. I'll take you there myself. First cup is on me. You can connect with the show on Instagram, Twitter, or X, TikTok, and YouTube. Send us feedback, guest ideas, and Love is Blind theories at connect@shrugcontent.com. Thanks for listening. See you next week.